Kyle Whittingham revealed the best position groups for the Wolverines thus far in spring. And there's another group that is getting some hype as well. We'll break it down right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday. We are back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. First, Kyle Whittingham appeared on Crane & Company, friends of the show, and shared his top 2 position groups in spring thus far. Then we'll get into the wide receivers, sure to continue to be one of our favorite topics for some time here on this show as well. And then finally, Elliot Cadeau did not travel with the team to Indy due to a possible allergic reaction. We're going to get into that too. So, all right, let's get into Kyle Whittingham was on Crane & Company today. I thought that, a lot of it, anytime he does these national interviews, there's not like a ton that we're getting out of it right now. It's kind of different than what Jim Harbaugh was, because he was just obviously trying to be nuts and put a lot of attention on the team. That's not what Whittingham's doing. And he gets asked a lot. And this isn't a slam on my friends there. It's a lot of the same stuff, right? And it's stuff that we've kind of already asked, how's Bryce looking? How's Ann Arbor and all that stuff. I mean, it's fine. It's a national perspective, but herein within this was a quote that I thought was really interesting. So he was asked by, I believe by Jake, if you were to determine the strength of this team, what would it be? And he went and listed position groups on either side of the ball. So I thought one was obvious and the other was kind of surprising. So let's read what he had to say and then react. Said, well, I really love our running back room. We have Jordan Marshall coming back, who's a proven commodity, and Savion Hiter, who is the top running back in the country in some polls. And he's really lived up to that. He was a mid-year guy, and he has looked terrific through his first 6 practices. Bryson Kuzdzal is another guy in the room, so we feel like we've got a really strong running back situation. Defensively, the front, we feel like we had a good front coming back, and that's something that is always critical. Defense starts at the line of scrimmage, and we feel like we've got some dudes up front. I think that is extremely good news on both sides. Now, yeah, to some degree, you want to hear the offensive line along with the defensive line. But I mean, we can't kid ourselves. That running back room is stacked. I'm going to have to agree with those in the Everydayer Club who have said, I think it was Ramos Herrick. Pretty sure. Memory escapes me, but I'm pretty sure it was him. That it had asked about Bryson Kuzdzal because he's like, he would start at a lot of Power 4 schools based off of what we were able to see late last year. And I can't disagree with that. It's just more that Jordan Marshall would start at 99% of schools. Savion Hiter, even as a true freshman, would probably start at 75% of schools. And Bryson Kuzdzal would probably start at a lot of other schools. I'd say maybe 30% or something like that. The fact that you have those 3, and we're not even talking about like Micah Capana, who was supposed to be the 3rd guy last year, who ended up being injured through a lot of the year, which also allowed Bryson, who had a better spring game, to be honest, to kind of wrest control of that 3rd spot. I think that says a lot. But I think the surprising thing ultimately is that if I was to guess before he said it, if you're looking on defense, I would have probably said the back end. I would have said the secondary. I probably would have said I guess you could say safety or corner. Because like at safety, you've got a lot of guys, that are either, relatively proven, obvious, or like extremely proven Rod Moore, relatively proven Mason Curtis, and, some unknowns. Chris Bracey, who I think is going to play a big role. We talked about him. But like the corners, like you've got both returning starting corners coming back, and you brought in a Utah starting corner in Smith Snowden. So that would have been, you got those guys. You've still got, some younger players like Shamari Earls. I mean, we've seen a lot of hype in the last couple of days about Jamarian Vincent, the freshman. So I would have probably looked at that and said, okay, that's probably what would be the strength is that back end. But to say that the strength is in the front, that bodes extremely well if that's true. Now, we met with Jonah Lea'ea, or Lea'ea, as that's actually how he said his name is pronounced, Lea'ea, today, and he was impressive. He doesn't necessarily, he's got the height and he doesn't have like the girth of a typical defensive tackle, but you know what? He was 8th on the team or 6th on the team, I believe, last year for Utah in tackles. He led the defensive tackles. He talked about how he's got speed and you normally don't see that from guys in the middle of the defensive line. Obviously, we'll see what John Henry Daly brings to the edge rushing group. And there's others that obviously like Nate Marshall, who have high expectations for. There have been some reports of Lugard Adekpai really stepping forward and having a good spring so far. I think that's a kind of weirdly tantalizing thing, because if that front is really good, because I think we can all assume, the offensive line should be good. The running backs will be good on that side of the ball. The receivers, and we're going to get into them in segment 2. Along with Bryce Underwood, like that should be good, right? Like offensively, it kind of feels like across the board that should be good. So if you can combine that with the front, which is where Kyle Whittingham wants to start always on the defensive side, and that can actually be the strength of the defense, considering like that's not what we were thinking going into the year, in the spring, really, right? Like it was like, that back end. That back end is going to be what drives it. And you just hope that the front can kind of match it. And just more and more outside of what Whittingham said, reports are indicating that that's true. You still have Enoetta and Trey Pierce there, and supposedly they've come on. And this is one of the things, like we talked about this last week or the week before, about the idea that this is a coaching staff that has typically not had this type of talent. And how that can kind of change things, right? Like, and you add in just including today, we met with 4 players today, and they're talking about how, Jair Hill's talking about how the coaching staff are teachers, and they're really like, they're teaching them things that they weren't learning before. So it's like, that's kind of, I think, what they're used to having to do. So for them to come and get guys who are more talented and then be able to coach them up like that, I mean, you might be cooking with gas. As I keep on saying, I love using the late, great Carl Weathers line from Arrested Development. Now you got a stew going. I think that's kind of what they might have. I mean, we'll know more in a couple weeks when we get to the spring game. But I think that's really, really encouraging. All right, let's talk about wide receivers, because we met with 2 cornerbacks and a wide receiver today. And all 3 had some really interesting things to say. I've got some quotes there. Let's get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and it's not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, we're going to continue on here momentarily, but before we do, it's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade with Intuit TurboTax. Because they now have in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar that you deserve while you get real-time notifications and go on about your day. It's a relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. So head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. Get your first month of the Everydayer Club for free when you use the code MARCH. You'll unlock ad-free episodes and entry into our private listener group chat where I'm hanging out daily. Click the link in the show notes or go to lockedonwolverines.supercast.com to claim your free month. All right, so let's look at some of these quotes from some of the about the wide receivers rather, because I think that you get both from Jair and Zeke. I think you get some really interesting things with names. I think you get conceptually, you get a bit from Andrew Marsh. I think one of the things is I think back to Jordan Marshall last week and him talking about it's just night and day. It's completely different. Asked him twice about the running backs and twice he was like, you got to see these receivers. We talked about that last week. The Jim Harbaugh likeness of it. Hey, offensive line, what do you got? Well, first I got to talk about the defense. All right. So, Andrew Marsh said this. I think we've been airing. This is me asking him about Jason Beck's offense and how it works for the wideouts. He said, I think we've been airing the ball out a lot, and it's something I'm really looking forward to. I hope everybody's really looking forward to it. I really feel like we're going to be dangerous this year, and really just the ability to come out and show what we can do on the ground and in the air. It's going to be crazy. So, I mean, that's relatively generic, but at the same time, I think we're going to be dangerous this year. You hope that's true. He got awfully close to 1,000 yards last year, and there were first third of the season didn't exist. Ohio State game didn't exist. So I think that you add in some of these other players and just a concept that of, hey, we're doing some stuff here. I think is sounded awfully Tim Robinson. I'm doing something. I miss Tim Robinson. Improv Inferno, Ann Arbor, circa 2005. It's a good time. If you didn't know, I'm Tim Robinson of I Think You Should Leave in SNL fame. Is a Michigan. I know you probably know he's a Michigan native, but I knew him back in the day. Improv Inferno on Main Street, where I had trained for a little while. He was part of the signature group Eye Candy. Anyway, I digress. So that is one thing. But here's, I think, where things get a little bit more interesting, because you ask defensive backs, who's tough to cover? So let's go with first what Zeke Berry had to say, because he's going to give you a bunch of names, and then Jair Hill gives you really one name. And I think that this is really interesting stuff. So Zeke Berry says, shoot, I mean, we got a dude right there, Andrew Marsh. Andrew was sitting behind the cameras. He's been challenging us a lot. JJ's been giving us a challenge. Kendrick Bell, some of the freshmen, Salesi, he's pretty good. Johnson, he's been giving us some problems. I feel like we're going to have a really deep receiver room, and I feel like all of the guys, no matter if it's a fourth-year guy, third-year guy, they're going to give us some work. So, let me close that program out and bring it back in. So that's, I think, really interesting because, number one, Andrew Marsh is obvious. JJ Buchanan is obvious. Kendrick Bell has been mentioned 3 or 4 times so far as being a guy who's really stood out. I think he was our inflection player 2 years ago. We didn't talk about him much going into last year. We haven't really talked about him much this spring. So if he can really stand out, I think that's huge. Salesi Moa, I think, is going to have a Marsh-like impact this year. And so when you move on to Jair Hill and what he said, I made this as legible as possible. So asked about who's been tough to cover. He says, they real good, freshmen to older guys. Salesi, real nice. I was just comparing yesterday to like Roman Wilson or something like that. He real nice. And they got like every level stacked with wide receivers. They looking real good. They real nice. So the fact that Salesi Moa is already getting compared to Roman Wilson, and keep in mind, Jair Hill had 1 year in practice of being able to go up against Roman Wilson. He came aboard in 2023. So he knows what he looks like. So that's beyond interesting that he's getting that type of comp. And that you had both cornerbacks mention him. Unabated. That's the great thing. What wide receivers are tough for you to cover right now? Right? Because even if like the position group, like let's just say hypothetically it isn't like insane and dangerous like Andrew Marsh said. I mean, we know he is dangerous. Like at least we're knowing who's so far been difficult to cover. And that's 2 mentions for Salesi Moa from the 2 starting cornerbacks on the team so far. I think that says a lot. I think that's really interesting. So, additionally, Andrew Marsh had to say this, asked about the freshmen, said they've been killing it. It's just crazy to see the flip side. Coming in a year ago, I was just in their position, but them coming in as freshmen, I would say they're really ahead of where I was coming in. The way they play and attack the ball, it's really special. So I'm really looking forward to seeing their development. That's both Salesi Moa and Travis Johnson. I mean, I think you are going to end up seeing both of them. Like Travis Johnson in high school already had it going as well, right? Like he was just running all over everybody. Just like EJ Holland, you used to see him a lot being in Virginia. And it just seemed like every game, it was like Travis Johnson with another 150 yards. I just feel like that's going to translate. And that's the type of thing that Michigan has long needed, is having wide receivers on the level that they had. And right, like this is where the complexion of the group is just different, because like last year, yeah, we were looking at it and saying, okay, Donovan McCulley had a solid year 2 years ago for Indiana. He's your number one. He looked really good at the outset, kind of production kind of fell off. Certainly was good at going up and making those contested catches and things of that nature. But otherwise, like we were relying heavily on Channing Goodwin and Samaj Morgan, neither of whom really kind of stepped up to the challenge. And then like a third of the way through the season was week 5? Suddenly Andrew Marsh starts stepping up and he becomes your number one receiver, ends up leading the entire team in yards with around 900 yards. But like that was it, right? Like it was Andrew Marsh. But now you add into the equation JJ Buchanan, who would have been third on the team in receiving yards last year, would have led the team in receiving touchdowns last year. You mix him in. You mix in Jamie French, who Andrew Marsh had said today is kind of similar to him, and all of that. Like we'll see what he ends up looking like, but he was mentioned as at the outset of spring ball, at least, as being one of the starting 4-ish. Along with Salesi Moa. The fact that Salesi Moa keeps on getting mentioned. The fact that you've got all of these guys now. It just feels more, it feels like what a lot of teams have always had, where it was kind of like you look at it and you say, man, there's just a lot of players out there, a lot of playmakers, a lot of people who can actually go out and catch the ball. And I mean, even in the last several years, that just hasn't been the case. And you would have thought it would have been when it was Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Tariq Black, Oliver Martin for a minute, and it just didn't really work out that way. It ended up being really Ronnie Bell, Nico, and then maybe you see DPJ make a big play here and there. More so on special teams than as a receiver, which was really disappointing. Like the last time that Michigan, I feel, has been like super reliable. I mean, I guess 2022 and 23 with Cornelius and Roman, but like Cornelius was intermittent. And Cornelius was very good at not being consistent when things looked easy. But when Michigan needed to like pick up big third downs, or that Indiana game in 2022, he had a terrible first half and incredible second half, right? Roman was a lot more consistent when he was healthy, which, the first 2 years, he wasn't that healthy, or I should say the second 2 years, sophomore and junior seasons, and then he was pretty solid all the way throughout the next year. But like otherwise, like I think back and you have to go back to 15, 16 to Darbo and Chesson, where it was just like consistent playmaking. And I feel like, I mean, this is a young core, but they've got everything going for them, and that's exciting. All right. We have to talk about Elliot Cadeau and the report that came out today via the Associated Press. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you still have to fill sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, I know I should have said this more up top. Apologies that we're a lot later getting this show out. Today, Monday, some of these days, we're a little bit later getting the show out than we normally would, and that's because we're having midday press conferences in Ann Arbor. And I like to write before I talk because it's just, you know, it's kind of like a warm-up exercise in a way, right? Rather than not. So apologies that this is like a 6 p.m. show. I'd prefer to get this out somewhere between 3 and 5. That's my intention, and we will continue to do that whenever we can. So that's just some house cleaning. All right. Elliot Cadeau reported by the Associated Press as not traveling via plane with the rest of his teammates to Indianapolis due to a possible allergic reaction, having supposedly eaten something that caused it. Now, according to the report, doctors have evaluated him. He appears to be fine. That's good news. As someone who's had a lot of allergy issues stemming back from starting with bee stings, and then, you know, I've had part of my life's journey personally is trying to deal with all of these different things, histamine intolerances and such. I mean, it's never fun. That sucks. So first off, like, that's terrible for him that he's had to go through whatever that is. I don't know. You know, it didn't give any details about whether he had any kind of anaphylaxis or if it was like, you know, rash or anything like that. Have had both. But the good news is it sounds like he's fine. Not great timing, of course, because also on top of everything, like whatever it was, we don't know what the time frame is for him to, like, you know, where he stands. I've had moments where, like, so this was bee sting related, not something I ate, but like when I got stung by some yellow jackets back in 2000, I think, I got stung several times over the course of a 2-week period. And the last time put me in the hospital. It took me a good week, not to freak you out, but it took a good week before like my breathing and everything got back to normal. It was pretty debilitating. And I didn't really want to get out of bed because it just always felt like, you know, my throat was closing. So hopefully it wasn't something like that, because that can be a challenge. And obviously Michigan doesn't have a backup point guard right now. So you hope that he can get better, because they're going to need Elliot, obviously. Now, you know, Michigan's front court probably against Arizona is in a better position to dominate than the backcourt. So that is a boon. And not to make things, I don't really want to make things about like how does it affect the team, but we have to talk about it. But, you know, I think that it's the good news is he sounds like he's okay. He's under doctor supervision, all of that stuff. But you hate to see the timing. At least it's Wednesday. It's not, you know, we're not talking about It happened on Thursday or Friday, so that's good. Might have happened yesterday. I don't know. Didn't really say. It's just that that was something that happened. So not great, Bob. So, but at the same time, sounds like at least the crisis has been averted and the town has been saved. Okay, that is enough of all the random references, movies and TV. We had a lot at this show. I feel like we've had like 5. Even when I don't say it's a reference, there's a lot of references. All right, that's going to do it for us today, though. Tomorrow being Thursday, we will mailbag it up. That is the plan, at least. We will talk to you again soon. Oh, I want to add, we will have John Fanta on the show on Friday to preview the Final Four. So that is the plan. So, all right, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.